I'm Heather Mitchell, 34 years old and a single mom trying my best. The moment is seared into my memory, Christmas Day. My brother Ryan examining the handmade jewelry box my 12-year-old daughter Jessica had spent weeks creating just for him. "Cheap, worthless trash," he muttered, tossing it aside like garbage. I watched Jessica's face crumble as tears filled her eyes. Ryan laughed, completely oblivious to her pain. That was the day I decided my brother would finally pay for his cruelty. Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever dealt with toxic family members. Trust me, this story will show you exactly why sometimes cutting ties is the only way forward. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. 3 years older than Ryan, I was expected to look out for him, protect him, and make sure he stayed out of trouble. But it became clear very early on that my parents had a different standard for us. While I was expected to excel academically, help around the house, and be the perfect daughter, Ryan could do no wrong in their eyes. When Ryan broke my mother's favorite vase at age 8, they brushed it off as boys being boys. When I accidentally stained the carpet at 10, I was grounded for a week. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Ryan's mistakes were overlooked, while mine were harshly punished. Our father worked at a local manufacturing plant while our mother stayed home to raise us. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we had enough. That is, until my senior year of high school, when my father suffered a severe heart attack. Medical bills piled up, and suddenly our family was in financial crisis. I had already been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, but it wasn't enough to cover all expenses. Without hesitation, I postponed college to work full-time at the local grocery store to help support my family. Meanwhile, Ryan was allowed to continue his normal teenage life, hanging out with friends and barely passing his classes. My parents never asked him to contribute, claiming they didn't want to burden him. After 2 years of working and saving, I finally enrolled in community college, taking night classes while working days. It took me 6 years to get my associate's degree in business management. During that time, Ryan somehow managed to attend a private university on our parents' dime, despite his mediocre grades. He dropped out after 3 semesters, claiming college wasn't for him. When I finally landed a decent job at a marketing firm, I met David. We fell in love quickly, got married, and I became pregnant with Jessica. I thought I'd finally found my happiness, but when Jessica was just 3 months old, David announced he wasn't ready for fatherhood and walked out, leaving me alone with a newborn and a mountain of debt. Through it all, Ryan continued his pattern of taking advantage of our parents. He moved in and out of their house whenever his latest business venture failed. He borrowed money he never repaid. He guilted them into co-signing loans for cars he couldn't afford. And they allowed it. Every single time. 3 years ago, our mother was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's disease. Without question, I moved back to my hometown to help care for her. By then, Jessica was 9, and I had managed to build a modest but stable life for us. I found a job at a local company, rented a small 2-bedroom house near my parents, and tried to re-establish a relationship with my family. Ryan had recently moved back as well, after his 3rd failed marriage. He claimed he returned to help with Mom, but I rarely saw him lift a finger to actually assist with her care. Instead, he was busy worming his way deeper into our parents' financial affairs, convincing them to add him as a signatory on their bank accounts just in case of emergency. Jessica, sweet and trusting as she is, idolized her Uncle Ryan from the moment we moved back. He was fun, charismatic, and showered her with attention at first. She desperately wanted his approval. Perhaps because her own father had abandoned her. Ryan would occasionally take her for ice cream or to the movies, just enough to maintain his image as the cool uncle. But these outings became increasingly rare. As Christmas approached that year, Jessica announced she wanted to make something special for Uncle Ryan. She spent weeks in her room after school, working on a wooden jewelry box. She painted it blue, his favorite color, lined it with felt, and even added a small mirror inside the lid. She used her own allowance to buy the supplies, and I helped her with the more difficult parts. She was so proud of her creation, convinced this would be the gift that would make her uncle truly see her. What Jessica didn't know was that Ryan had been systematically turning our parents against me. He told them I was after their money, that I was an unfit mother, that Jessica was troubled because of my parenting. He suggested they should update their will to make him the sole beneficiary and executor of their estate. And to my horror, they were listening. The silence in the room after Ryan's cruel comment was deafening. Jessica ran from the room, sobbing. My parents sat frozen, uncomfortable but unwilling to confront their precious son. I followed Jessica upstairs, finding her curled on her bed, the tears streaming down her face. "He hates me, Mom," she whispered. "Why does Uncle Ryan hate me?" Something inside me snapped. Years of resentment, of swallowing my anger, of making excuses for my brother's behavior, it all came crashing down. I marched downstairs, where Ryan was happily unwrapping his other gifts, including the expensive watch our parents had given him. "You need to apologize to Jessica," I demanded, my voice shaking. Ryan barely looked up. "For what? Being honest? That box looks like something a kindergartner would make. She spent weeks on that gift. She used her own money. She put her heart into it." He rolled his eyes. "Not my fault. The kid has no talent." I lost control. The slap echoed through the room. Ryan's hand flew to his reddening cheek, his eyes wide with shock. My mother gasped. My father stood, anger crossing his face, not at Ryan, but at me. "Heather, how dare you?" my mother cried. "You need to leave," my father said coldly. Now, I looked from one parent to the other, searching for any sign of support. There was none. Even after witnessing Ryan's cruelty, they chose him. They always chose him. "Fine," I said, my voice hollow. "Jessica and I will go. Merry Christmas." The drive home was silent except for Jessica's occasional sniffles. I kept replaying the scene in my head, knowing I'd crossed a line but unable to feel sorry for it. That night, as Jessica slept, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee, trying to process what had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Ryan says he'll forgive you if you apologize. Please don't ruin the family over this." I didn't respond. The next morning, I discovered that my parents had canceled the family dinner we'd planned for New Year's Eve. They didn't even call me. I found out through a mutual friend. The message was clear: side with Ryan or be excluded. Over the following weeks, the family division deepened. My calls to my mother went straight to voicemail. My father would speak to me only about practical matters, his tone formal and distant. Jessica was disinvited from her cousin's birthday party, Ryan's daughter, Amy, who was the same age and had been Jessica's only friend since moving back. At school, Jessica began coming home with stories of Amy and her friends whispering about her, excluding her from games, spreading rumors. "Amy says you're crazy, Mom," Jessica confessed one evening. "She says her dad told her, you're dangerous." I tried to shield Jessica from the worst of it, but the strain showed in her falling grades and increasing silence. My bright, creative girl was withdrawing into herself, and I felt powerless to stop it. Then, in February, I lost my job. My boss, Walter, called me into his office and awkwardly explained that the company was restructuring. When I pressed him for the real reason, he eventually admitted that Ryan, an old golf buddy of his, had mentioned concerns about my mental stability. Desperate for answers, I drove to my parents' house one afternoon when I knew Ryan would be at work. To my surprise, my mother let me in, though her manner was guarded. As we sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd done homework, where I'd helped prepare countless family meals, I asked her directly why they had chosen to believe Ryan's lies. "He's not lying, Heather," she said softly. "We've seen how you are, always jealous of your brother, always thinking you deserve more. Ryan showed us your bank statements. You're drowning in debt. He's worried you might try to pressure us for money." "My bank statements? How would Ryan have those?" She looked away. "He was trying to help. He thought maybe he could assist you with financial planning." The realization hit me like a truck. Ryan had been monitoring my finances. But how? Unless, after leaving my parents' house, I went straight to the bank. My suspicions were confirmed. Someone had accessed my accounts repeatedly over the past 3 months. The bank manager showed me the access logs. all from an IP address I didn't recognize, using my credentials. Only 3 people knew my banking password myself. My ex-husband David, who was living in another state, and Ryan, whom I'd foolishly trusted to help me set up automatic bill payments when I first moved back to town. That evening, I dug deeper. I pulled my credit report and discovered 2 credit cards I hadn't opened, both maxed out with cash advances. I found mysterious withdrawals from my savings account, small enough to go unnoticed individually, but adding up to over $3,000. My identity had been stolen, and I knew exactly who had done it. When I confronted my parents with this evidence, they refused to believe me. Ryan had prepared them well, convincing them I was unstable, possibly even suffering from paranoid delusions. "You need help, Heather," my father said sadly. "Professional help." The final blow came in March. I received a certified letter from a family court. Ryan had filed for emergency custody of Jessica, claiming I was unfit to care for her due to escalating mental health issues, financial irresponsibility, and erratic behavior. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Standing in my kitchen, the letter trembling in my hands, I made a decision. If the system wouldn't protect us, if my own family wouldn't protect us, then I would have to do it myself. Ryan had declared war, and I was finally ready to fight back. That night, after Jessica went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh notebook and pen. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "Operation Truth." If I was going to take on Ryan and win, I needed to be methodical, thorough, and most importantly, patient. Revenge wouldn't happen overnight. It would require careful planning. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I knew Ryan worked at Meridian Investments, a local financial advisory firm where he'd been for the past 2 years, his longest stretch of employment in his adult life. He'd bragged at Christmas about being on track to become a partner, about the clients who trusted him with millions of dollars. But knowing Ryan's history of exaggeration and outright lies, I wondered how much of this was true. I reached out to an old high school friend, Stephanie Collins, who now worked in human resources at Meridian. We hadn't spoken in years, but she had reached out when I moved back to town, suggesting coffee sometime. I'd been too busy settling in to take her up on it. Now, I invited her to lunch, carefully planning what I would say. Stephanie was surprised but pleased to hear from me. Over salads at a cafe far from her office, I let her do most of the talking at first, catching up on the past decade of our lives. When she asked about my family, I gave a carefully edited version of events enough to hint at problems with Ryan, but nothing that sounded like a vendetta. "That's strange," she said, frowning. "Ryan always talks about how close you all are. Just last week, he was telling everyone how you rely on him for financial advice." I forced a smile. That's Ryan, always the hero of his own story. Stephanie hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Can I tell you something in confidence? There have been concerns at work. A few clients have complained about discrepancies in their accounts. Nothing proven yet, but there's an internal audit happening." This was my first lead. Over the next week, I did my homework. I researched Meridian Investments online, reading through their website and social media. I found their client reviews, noting several negative ones that mentioned unauthorized transactions and unexplained fees. They'd been deleted from the company's Facebook page, but were still visible on independent review sites. I also looked into Ryan's personal life. His social media portrayed him as a devoted family man, posting photos with his current wife Lisa and their 2 children. But through mutual acquaintances, I learned he was frequently seen at the Oaks, an upscale bar across town, often in the company of women who weren't his wife. One night, I put on a dark wig and glasses, a simple disguise that changed my appearance enough that Ryan wouldn't recognize me from across a dimly lit room. Sure enough, there he was at the Oaks, sitting close to a blonde woman at the bar, his wedding ring noticeably absent. I took a seat at the other end of the bar and ordered a club soda. For 2 hours, I observed as Ryan bought round after round of expensive cocktails, paid for with a black credit card I didn't recognize. When they left together, his hand inappropriately low on her back, I snapped a few discreet photos with my phone. The next day, I expanded my search. I visited the county clerk's office and requested public records related to Ryan's finances, property records, tax liens, civil lawsuits. The results were illuminating. 3 lawsuits from former business partners alleging fraud, 2 from ex-wives claiming hidden assets during divorce proceedings, and a tax lien for unpaid property taxes on a vacation home I never knew he owned. I also discovered that Ryan had formed a series of LLCs over the past 5 years, each operating for a short period before dissolving. The pattern was suspicious, exactly the kind of behavior used to hide assets or engage in fraudulent activities. Through persistent research and carefully cultivated contacts, I began to piece together a disturbing picture. Ryan appeared to be running a classic investment scam. He would gain clients' trust, convince them to invest in exclusive opportunities, then divert their funds through his network of shell companies. Some money would be returned as dividends to maintain the illusion of legitimate returns, while the rest disappeared likely into offshore accounts. His partner at Meridian, Keith Blackwood, seemed to be either complicit or willfully ignorant. I found social media photos of them together on a fishing trip in the Cayman Islands, a notorious tax haven just last year. I compiled everything meticulously: dates, names, account numbers when available, screenshots of deleted reviews, photos of Ryan with various women who weren't his wife. I created a timeline of his financial activities, noting patterns and suspicious coincidences. But I needed more, hard evidence that would be impossible to dismiss. I contacted a private investigator named Amy Rodriguez, explaining that I suspected my identity had been stolen by a family member. I didn't mention my broader plans, just enough to get professional help tracking the financial crimes committed against me personally. Amy was efficient and discreet. Within 2 weeks, she provided documentation proving that Ryan had indeed stolen my identity, opened fraudulent credit accounts, and systematically siphoned money from my savings. She also uncovered something I hadn't known. Ryan had taken out a second mortgage on our parents' house 6 months ago, forging their signatures on the paperwork. The money, over $120,000, had been transferred to an account in the Caymans. "Your brother's been busy," Amy said grimly when she showed me her findings. "This isn't opportunistic theft. This is calculated, organized fraud. And based on what I'm seeing, you're not his only victim." Armed with this knowledge, I continued building my case, documenting every lie Ryan had told our family about me, every manipulative conversation, every time he'd undermined my relationship with our parents. I noted the dates when Jessica had come home crying because of rumors spread by Ryan's children. I recorded the financial impact of losing my job due to his interference. By the end of April, my kitchen table was covered with evidence of Ryan's true nature. Looking at it all spread out before me, I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. The brother I'd once protected, despite his flaws, was actually a calculating predator who had targeted his own family. And now I had proof. The custody hearing was approaching, and I knew Ryan was counting on my appearing unstable and desperate. Instead, I would be prepared and in control. It was time to start assembling my allies. With the custody hearing just 2 weeks away, I needed to build a support network, people who could verify my character and counteract Ryan's poisonous narrative. More importantly, I needed legal representation. My first call was to Michael Donovan, an attorney who had been friends with our family for years. Though he specialized in real estate law rather than family court, I hoped he could refer me to someone appropriate. When I explained the situation, including the evidence I'd gathered about Ryan's financial crimes, Michael was silent for a long moment. "Heather," he finally said, "I can't represent you in the custody case. That's not my area of expertise, but I know someone who can. And I'd like to help with the financial fraud aspects. What your brother has done, it's serious criminal behavior." Michael introduced me to Rebecca Torres, a family law attorney with a reputation for handling difficult cases. When we met, I brought my organized evidence, including Amy Rodriguez's investigation result. Rebecca reviewed everything carefully, her expression growing increasingly grave. "This is one of the most blatant examples of familial sabotage I've ever seen," she said finally. "The custody filing is clearly retaliatory and without merit. But we need to be strategic here. Going on the offensive too aggressively could make you appear vindictive." Together, we developed a 2-pronged approach: defend against the custody claim with evidence of my stable parenting and financial responsibility, despite Ryan's interference, while quietly building a separate case regarding his criminal activities. Next, I reached out to my cousin Sarah, who lived in a neighboring state. Years ago, Ryan had borrowed $15,000 from her for a sure-thing investment that mysteriously failed. When she pressed him for repayment, or at least documentation of where the money went, he spread rumors in the family that she was a drug addict who had blown the money herself. Many relatives believed him, and Sarah had withdrawn from family gatherings, hurt and angry. When I called her, the conversation was initially tense. "Why should I get involved in your family drama, Heather? Last time I checked, you believed Ryan's lies about me too." Her words stung because they were true. I had doubted her at the time, influenced by Ryan's convincing performance of concern for her addiction. "You were right about him, Sarah. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. But now he's trying to take my daughter away. I need your help." After a long silence, she agreed to meet. I drove 3 hours to her home that weekend, Jessica staying with a trusted friend. I showed Sarah everything I had discovered. By the end of our conversation, tears were streaming down her face. "It's like waking up from a nightmare," she said. "All these years, I thought I was crazy for being so angry about what he did. I even started to wonder if maybe I had misremembered things." Sarah agreed to provide a sworn statement about Ryan's financial fraud and subsequent character assassination campaign against her. She also put me in touch with 2 other family members who'd had similar experiences but had been too ashamed or intimidated to speak up. Through Amy Rodriguez, I connected with several of Ryan's victims from outside the family clients, whose investments had mysteriously disappeared, business partners who'd been left holding the bag when ventures failed. Many were reluctant to get involved, embarrassed at having been conned or fearful of legal repercussions if they'd unknowingly participated in fraudulent schemes. But 3 agreed to provide statements documenting their experiences. One crucial ally emerged from an unexpected direction. Rachel Winters had been Ryan's assistant at Meridian for the past year. She reached out to me after hearing rumors about the upcoming custody hearing. "I've wanted to quit for months," she confessed when we met at a park far from her workplace. "The things he asks me to do, altering client statements, redirecting phone calls, creating fake investment prospectuses. I've kept copies of everything, just in case." Rachel provided digital copies of incriminating documents showing how Ryan had been systematically defrauding clients. She also confirmed my suspicions about his business partner Keith's involvement. "Keith knows something's not right, but the returns have been so good he doesn't ask questions." Classic willful blindness. While building this network of adult allies, I was also focused on helping Jessica recover from the emotional damage Ryan had inflicted. I enrolled her in counseling with Dr. Marta Jimenez, a child psychologist specializing in family trauma. After several sessions, Dr. Jimenez confirmed what I had feared: Jessica was showing signs of anxiety and depression, stemming from the family conflict and social rejection. "She's a resilient girl," Dr. Jimenez assured me, "but she's been deeply hurt by her uncle's rejection and the subsequent bullying at school. Children her age desperately need stability and belonging." Dr. Jimenez agreed to provide expert testimony regarding Jessica's emotional state and the negative impact of Ryan's behavior on her well-being. She also suggested that Jessica could benefit from being involved in some aspects of our preparation for the hearing. "Not the adult details, of course," she clarified, "but allowing her to research the positive impact of stable single-parent homes, or to document her own daily routine and support systems, could help her regain a sense of control." Jessica threw herself into this project with unexpected enthusiasm. Together, we created a presentation about our family life photos of our home, her schoolwork and art, our community involvement. It became a healing exercise for both of us, reinforcing all the positive aspects of our life that Ryan had tried to destroy. One evening, as we worked on this project, Jessica looked up at me with serious eyes. "Mom, is it wrong that I still wish Uncle Ryan liked me?" The question broke my heart. "No, honey, it's not wrong. It's natural to want people to like us, especially family. But sometimes people aren't capable of giving us what we need. That's not our fault. Is that why we're fighting?" To show everyone he's not nice? I considered my answer carefully. How could I explain the complexity of what we were doing without burdening her with adult concerns? We're fighting because sometimes the truth is important, I said finally. And because no one has the right to take you away from me based on lies. She nodded, seeming satisfied with this explanation. I want to help tell the truth. As our support network grew and the evidence mounted, I faced a moral dilemma. My original motivation had been revenge, making Ryan pay for years of manipulation and cruelty. But was I any better than him if I was driven by vengeance rather than justice? I discussed this concern with Michael during one of our strategy sessions. The difference, he said thoughtfully, is that Ryan hurts people for personal gain. You're exposing the truth to protect yourself, your daughter, and potentially many others from continued harm. Intent matters, Heather. Still, I was careful to check my motivations daily, to ensure I wasn't crossing ethical lines in my pursuit of justice. I wanted Ryan stopped and held accountable, not destroyed out of spite. I needed to model for Jessica that standing up for yourself didn't mean becoming the very thing you were fighting against. By early May, our alliance was in place. We had legal representation, expert witnesses, character statements from friends and colleagues, evidence of Ryan's financial crimes, and a growing network of his victims willing to testify. We were as prepared as we could be for the custody hearing. What I didn't expect was the final ally who would join our cause, Ryan's wife, Lisa. 2 days before the hearing, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, Lisa's voice came through, tense and hushed. "We need to talk," she said. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There's something you should know." The morning before the custody hearing, I met Lisa at a coffee shop an hour away from town to avoid being seen. I hardly recognized her. The normally perfectly groomed, confident woman looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair hastily pulled back. "I found something," she said without preamble, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Emails between Ryan and Keith. They're planning to move money offshore before the internal audit is complete. There's also," she hesitated, "evidence that he's been monitoring your accounts, your calls, even installing spyware on Jessica's school laptop. He's obsessed with destroying you, Heather." "Why are you helping me?" I asked, suspicious of a trap. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "Because last week I found out he's been cheating on me with at least 3 women. And because I overheard him on the phone laughing about taking Jessica away from you just to teach you a lesson. No child should be a pawn in someone's revenge fantasy." The flash drive contained exactly what Lisa had promised. Dozens of incriminating emails detailing financial fraud, identity theft, and Ryan's methodical campaign to destroy my credibility and take Jessica away. It was the smoking gun we needed. That afternoon, following our carefully constructed plan, Michael sent copies of selected emails to Keith Blackwood with a brief professional note. "Mr. Blackwood, these documents have come into my possession as part of an investigation into financial irregularities at Meridian Investments. I thought you should be aware of their contents before they are submitted to the relevant authorities." Within an hour, Keith called Ryan in a panic. Thanks to the spyware Ryan had installed on my phone, now working against him, Rebecca was able to record their conversation legally. Keith was furious, terrified of being implicated in Ryan's schemes. "You said this was just aggressive trading," Keith shouted. "Do you realize we could go to prison? The SEC doesn't mess around with this stuff." "Calm down," Ryan replied, his voice falsely confident. "It's just Heather trying to scare us. She's got nothing solid." "Nothing solid?" "There are emails, Ryan. Emails where you specifically talk about diverting client funds. I need to protect myself here. Look, I need some cash to deal with this. Let me borrow 50 grand, just until things cool down." Keith laughed bitterly. "You're delusional. I'm meeting with my own attorney this afternoon. You're on your own." As expected, Ryan immediately called our parents, asking for a temporary loan to handle an unexpected business situation. I had prepared for this by visiting them the previous evening, not to accuse Ryan or try to convince them of his crimes, but simply to check on my mother's health and repair some of our strained relationship. During that visit, I had gently mentioned being concerned about unusual activity on my bank accounts, suggesting they might want to check their own finances just to be safe. I planted just enough doubt that when Ryan called asking for money, they hesitated rather than immediately agreeing. "We need to think about it, son," my father said, according to the account he later gave me. "Things have been tight lately." Ryan's carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel. That evening, a business reporter from the local newspaper called him for comment on allegations of financial misconduct at Meridian Investments. This was courtesy of an anonymous tip from Rachel, Ryan's assistant, about the internal audit and client complaints. Meanwhile, Rebecca submitted our comprehensive response to the custody filing, including expert testimony from Dr. Jimenez, character references from Jessica's teachers and our neighbors, and evidence of the stable, loving home I had created, despite financial challenges partly caused by Ryan's identity theft. The morning of the hearing, the first domino fell. The judge, reviewing our response and the concerning pattern of harassment it revealed, declined to issue even a temporary change in custody. Instead, she ordered a full investigation into Ryan's allegations and motivations, expressing concern about potential abuse of the family court system. As we left the courthouse, Ryan was waiting, his face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You think you're so clever, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." Rebecca stepped between us. "Mr. Mitchell, I'd advise against making threats. They could be construed as witness intimidation." He stormed off, but the look in his eyes sent a chill down my spine. Ryan had always been used to winning, to manipulating situations to his advantage. Now that he was facing resistance, I feared what he might do next. That afternoon, local news reported that Meridian Investments had announced a leadership restructuring effective immediately, with Keith Blackwood taking sole control of the firm pending an internal review. Ryan's name was conspicuously absent from the press release. When Ryan arrived home that evening, he found Lisa packing her bags and those of their children. "We're staying with my sister for a while," she informed him coolly. "I've spoken with a divorce attorney. Don't try to contact us except through legal channels." By the end of the day, Ryan had lost his job, was facing divorce, had been denied custody of Jessica, and was now under investigation by both his former employer and, unknown to him yet, the Securities and Exchange Commission, thanks to an anonymous tip containing selected documents from our evidence collection. That night, I received a text from my father. "We need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow morning?" Alone. The first phase of our plan had succeeded beyond my expectations. Ryan's house of cards was collapsing around him, but as I would soon discover, a cornered predator is at his most dangerous. I arrived at my parents' house the next morning feeling cautiously optimistic. Perhaps they were finally ready to hear the truth about Ryan. Instead, I found them sitting stiffly in the living room, their faces drawn and hostile. My father held a manila folder in his hands. "Explain this," he demanded, sliding several papers across the coffee table toward me. They were printouts of emails, apparently from my account, discussing plans to frame Ryan for financial crimes, manipulate Lisa into leaving him, and destroy him completely. The emails were addressed to Michael, Rebecca, and several others involved in our alliance. "These are fake," I said immediately. "I never wrote these." "They came from your email address," my mother said, her voice trembling. "Ryan found them when he was trying to help set up your defense for the custody hearing." Of course he had. Ryan had accessed my accounts before. Creating falsified emails would be simple for him, but the damage was done. My parents wanted to believe him, and these forgeries gave them the excuse they needed. "Mom, Dad, please," I urged. "Think about this. Why would I document plans to frame Ryan in emails? That makes no sense." "Because you've always been jealous of him," my father snapped. "Always competing. Always thinking you deserved more. Ryan told us you threatened him yesterday at the courthouse." "That's a lie. He threatened me." The conversation deteriorated from there. No matter what I said, they had chosen their side. As I left, my mother called after me. "Don't bother coming to Sunday dinner anymore. We can't have this kind of toxicity around us." Ryan's counterattack had just begun. That afternoon, 2 police officers appeared at my door with a complaint. Ryan had reported receiving death threats from me. The officers were professional but thorough, questioning me for over an hour while Jessica watched wide-eyed from the hallway. Though they eventually left without arresting me, the message was clear: Ryan was escalating. By filing a police report, he had created an official record that could be used against me later, regardless of whether the allegations were substantiated. The next blow came the following day when I received a call from Dr. Jimenez, Jessica's therapist. "Heather, I'm so sorry, but I've been subpoenaed for Jessica's therapy records. Ryan's attorney is claiming that your psychological state poses a danger to Jessica, and that the therapy was actually to address issues stemming from your parenting, not his actions." "Can they do that?" I asked, horrified at this invasion of Jessica's private therapeutic space. "I'm fighting it," Dr. Jimenez assured me. "But I wanted you to know, this is getting ugly." It got uglier still when Ryan somehow obtained photos of me meeting with Lisa at the coffee shop. He edited them to make it appear as though I was handing her something rather than the other way around, then sent them to his attorney claiming I had bribed his wife to falsify evidence against him. 3 days after the custody hearing, 2 social workers from Child Protective Services showed up for an emergency evaluation of our home environment. Someone obviously Ryan had reported me for neglect and emotional abuse. The social workers were kind but thorough, interviewing Jessica separately while inspecting our home. Though they found no evidence of the alleged abuse and ultimately closed the case, the experience was traumatizing for Jessica. That night, she crawled into my bed, something she hadn't done since she was 8. "Mom," she whispered in the darkness, "are they going to take me away?" "No, sweetie," I promised, holding her close. "Never." But in truth, I wasn't certain anymore. Ryan was proving more vindictive and resourceful than I had anticipated. He seemed to have connections everywhere, from the police department to CPS. Each time we thought we were making progress, he found a new angle of attack. Financial pressure mounted as well. Fighting the legal battles required money I didn't have. Michael was working pro bono, and Rebecca had agreed to a payment plan. But court filings, expert testimonies, and private investigator fees quickly drained my savings. The identity theft had already damaged my credit, making it impossible to obtain loans. Meanwhile, the whisper campaign in our community intensified. Parents at Jessica's school avoided me at pickup time. Invitations to birthday parties and playdates for Jessica mysteriously disappeared. Our neighbor, who had been watering my plants while we were away for a weekend, awkwardly explained that she didn't have time anymore. The isolation wore on us both. Jessica, once outgoing and confident, became withdrawn at school. Her teacher reported that she was eating lunch alone and rarely participating in class discussions. At home, she jumped at unexpected sounds and kept checking that the doors were locked. 6 weeks after the initial custody hearing, Ryan played his most devastating card yet. Through his attorney, he submitted new evidence to the family court: the falsified emails, the manipulated photos of my meeting with Lisa, and statements from my parents questioning my mental stability. Based on this evidence, the judge ordered a full psychological evaluation of both Jessica and me. While not changing the custody arrangement yet, the order included supervised visitation, meaning a court-appointed observer would monitor my interactions with my own daughter during designated periods. The night after receiving this devastating news, I sat alone in my kitchen after Jessica was in bed, surrounded by the evidence of Ryan's crimes that had seemed so damning just weeks earlier. None of it mattered if I couldn't effectively counter his narrative. He had resources I lacked, connections I couldn't match, and a lifetime of practice at manipulation. For the first time since this battle began, I seriously considered giving up. Maybe I could take Jessica and leave, change our names, start over somewhere. Ryan couldn't find us, but that would mean living as fugitives, always looking over our shoulders. What kind of life would that be for Jessica? My phone rang, startling me from my dark thoughts. It was Michael. "Heather, I know things look bad," he said without preamble, "but we're not done fighting. Rebecca and I have been talking. There's something we haven't tried yet, something Ryan won't be expecting." "What's left?" I asked, unable to keep the defeat from my voice. "He's always one step ahead." "Not always," Michael replied. "Remember when we first discussed this case, and I said the custody issue and the financial crimes should be handled separately? I think it's time to bring them together." Ryan's been playing offense, but he has a vulnerability he doesn't know about yet. What vulnerability? The charity foundation. Amy Rodriguez found something in her investigation that we haven't used yet. Something big. As Michael explained what Amy had discovered, I felt a glimmer of hope return. Maybe, just maybe, we had found Ryan's Achilles heel. 3 years ago, Ryan had joined the board of the Sunshine Foundation, a charity supporting children with cancer. It was a prestigious position that enhanced his image as a successful, community-minded businessman. He'd often mentioned his important charity work at family gatherings, basking in our parents' proud smiles. What Amy Rodriguez had discovered, tucked away in a forgotten storage unit rented under one of Ryan's shell company names, was a bombshell. Financial records indicating he had been systematically embezzling from the charity for years. The storage unit contained backup drives, paper records, and even a notebook in Ryan's handwriting detailing how he diverted donations into personal accounts. The amounts were staggering, over $1.2 million siphoned from funds meant to help critically ill children. The records showed Ryan using this money to finance his lavish lifestyle. Luxury vacations, expensive watches, even the down payment on his vacation home. This is different from his other financial crimes, Michael explained. Defrauding individual investors is serious, but stealing from sick children? That crosses a line that even our parents won't be able to ignore. The next morning, Rebecca, Michael, and I met to formulate our strategy. We needed to approach this carefully. If Ryan realized we had this evidence before we could properly document and safeguard it, he might destroy it or find a way to discredit it. First, Rebecca said, we need to make copies of everything and store them in multiple secure locations. Amy is arranging that now. Then, Michael continued, we need to authenticate the records. I have a forensic accountant colleague who can verify the paper trail and confirm the money flow. And finally, Rebecca concluded, we need to decide how to use this information strategically. This isn't just about winning the custody battle anymore. This is about stopping Ryan from hurting anyone else. Over the next week, we worked tirelessly. The forensic accountant, Diane Kelly, confirmed that the records were genuine and demonstrated a clear pattern of embezzlement. Amy Rodriguez documented the chain of custody for all evidence, ensuring it would stand up to legal scrutiny. Michael prepared a comprehensive report detailing the scope and duration of the fraud. Meanwhile, Jessica and I continued to endure the supervised visitation arrangement. The court-appointed observer, Miss Patel, was professional and unobtrusive, but her presence was a constant reminder of how successfully Ryan had manipulated the system against us. During one of these supervised sessions, as Jessica and I were baking cookies together, she suddenly asked, Mom, why does Uncle Ryan hate us so much? Miss Patel pretended not to listen, but I knew she was recording everything. I chose my words carefully. I don't think he hates us, sweetie. I think Uncle Ryan is someone who's never learned how to care about other people's feelings. He only knows how to care about what he wants. Jessica considered this as she cut out another cookie shape. Like when he called my jewelry box trash? Exactly like that. A person who cares about others would have seen how much work you put into that gift and appreciated it, even if it wasn't perfect. Do you think he'll ever change? The question caught me off guard. Despite everything, there was still a part of Jessica that hoped for reconciliation, for the uncle she'd once adored to return. I don't know, I answered honestly. People can change, but they have to want to. And they have to face the consequences of their actions first. Miss Patel made a note in her tablet. I hoped my response had been appropriate. The constant scrutiny was exhausting. That evening, after Jessica was asleep and Miss Patel had left, Rebecca called with news. We've got everything in place. It's time to confront Ryan directly. Is that wise? I asked, surprised. Won't he just deny everything? That's exactly what we want, Rebecca explained. We'll record the conversation legally, since you'll be a party to it. When he denies it and then we produce the evidence, it strengthens our case exponentially. The confrontation was arranged for the following day at Michael's office, neutral territory with security cameras and witnesses. Ryan arrived punctually, looking confident in an expensive suit. His smirk faded when he saw me sitting between Michael and Rebecca. What's this about? He demanded. If you're trying to intimidate me, please. Ryan, Michael interrupted smoothly. Take a seat. This won't take long. Once Ryan reluctantly sat down, I slid a single photograph across the table, the storage unit containing the Sunshine Foundation records. We know about the money, Ryan. The $1.2 million you stole from children with cancer. His face went blank for just a moment before his practiced charm reasserted itself. I have no idea what you're talking about. Is this another one of your desperate attempts to discredit me, Heather? It won't work. We have the records, I continued calmly. All of them. The transfers, the withdrawals, even your handwritten notes planning how to divert donations before they hit the Foundation's books. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Those are Foundation business records. If you've stolen them, you've committed a crime. Michael leaned forward. Actually, they're evidence of your crimes, discovered legally during a private investigation into identity theft. We've authenticated everything with a forensic accountant. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was Ryan's increasingly rapid breathing. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. So what? What exactly do you think you're going to do with this so-called evidence? Go to the police? They'll never believe you over me. Go to the Foundation? I'll say you fabricated everything out of jealousy. Go to our parents? Please. They've already chosen sides. We're giving you one chance, Rebecca said quietly. Withdraw the custody claim. Retract the false allegations. Stay away from Heather and Jessica permanently. Ryan's laugh turned ugly. Or what? You'll ruin me? Good luck. I've survived worse than you, big sister. Always have, always will. He stood, straightening his jacket. You know what your problem is, Heather? You've always been too soft. Too concerned with doing the right thing. That's why you'll lose, because I'll do whatever it takes to win. As he turned to leave, I played my final card. I have recordings, Ryan. He froze with his hand on the doorknob. Recordings of you talking about the charity money. About how the cancer brats would never know the difference. About how easy it was to fool everyone. It was a bluff, we didn't actually have such recordings. But Ryan's reaction told me everything. His shoulders tensed, and when he turned back, his face had gone ashen. You're lying, he whispered. Want to bet Jessica's future on that? I asked. For the first time in our lives, I saw raw fear in my brother's eyes. Then, just as quickly, it was replaced by cold fury. You have no idea what you've just done, he said softly. No idea at all. After he left, Michael broke the tense silence. Well, that was illuminating. He's not going to back down, I said, suddenly exhausted. He's going to escalate. Rebecca nodded grimly. Yes, but now we have leverage. And more importantly, we have a plan. That plan unfolded over the next 2 days. First, Amy Rodriguez and her team secured the original documents from the storage unit, transferring them to a bank vault under Michael's supervision. Then, Diane Kelly completed her forensic analysis, producing a detailed report tracing every dollar Ryan had stolen. With the evidence secured, we moved to the next phase, carefully approaching selected Foundation board members with our findings. Michael had identified 2 members with impeccable reputations who had previously expressed concerns about financial transparency, concerns Ryan had dismissed. Their reaction was immediate and decisive. An emergency board meeting was called, external auditors were engaged, and Ryan was temporarily suspended pending investigation. Meanwhile, Jessica had thrown herself into a special project. Inspired by our discussions about the Sunshine Foundation's mission, she had decided to create a photo essay documenting the real impact of the charity's work. With my supervision and appropriate permissions, she interviewed families who had benefited from the Foundation's support, capturing their stories and struggles. This is what Uncle Ryan stole from, she explained as she showed me the powerful images she'd taken. Real kids fighting real battles. Her project not only provided compelling context for the financial evidence, but also gave Jessica a sense of purpose and agency in our ongoing struggle. For the first time in months, I saw glimpses of my daughter's former confidence and empathy returning. The final piece of our strategy involved my parents. Despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of them learning about Ryan's ultimate betrayal through news reports or gossip. They deserved to hear it from me, with concrete evidence they couldn't dismiss. I arranged to meet them at their home, bringing only the most irrefutable documents. Photos of Ryan's handwritten notes outlining the embezzlement scheme, bank statements showing transfers to his personal accounts, and most damning of all, recordings we had legally obtained of him mocking the charity's mission while spending its funds on luxury items. My father insisted Ryan be present for this meeting, which I had anticipated. When we all gathered in their living room, the tension was palpable. Ryan positioned himself beside our mother, his arm protectively around her shoulders as if I were the threat. "Let's get this over with," my father said gruffly. "What's so important that you had to interrupt our Sunday?" One by one, I laid out the evidence on the coffee table. My mother gasped as she read Ryan's notes in his familiar handwriting, detailing how to skim the donations before the accountants see them. Ryan immediately launched into denials. "This is all fabricated. Heather's been planning this for months, trying to destroy me because she's always been jealous." "Then explain this," I said quietly, playing a recording on my phone. Ryan's voice filled the room. "These cancer families are so pathetically grateful for any crumb. They'll never audit where every dollar goes. Besides, those kids probably won't live long enough to benefit from half of this money anyway." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face drained of color. That's not me," Ryan stammered. "It's a voice impersonation. Technology can do that now." "The foundation has already verified the embezzlement, Ryan," I said gently. "The board meeting was yesterday. The police will be involved next. This isn't about me versus you anymore. This is about the truth finally coming out." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my father stood, his movements stiff and uncertain. He walked to the mantelpiece where family photos were displayed, including several of Ryan receiving community service awards, his practiced smile gleaming. "All these years," he said, his voice breaking. "All these years, we believed in you." Ryan's facade finally cracked. "Dad, you don't understand. I was going to pay it back. It was just temporary." "Get out," my father interrupted, not turning around. "Get out of this house." "Mom?" Ryan appealed desperately. "You know me. You know I wouldn't." "I don't know you at all," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't think I ever did." As Ryan stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness. This revelation would devastate my parents, shaking the foundation of their world. But it was necessary both to protect Jessica and to stop Ryan from hurting others. That night, as Jessica and I walked home from my parents' house, they had asked us to stay for dinner. The first such invitation in months, she looked up at me thoughtfully. "Is it over now? Will Uncle Ryan stop trying to take me away?" I squeezed her hand. "I think the worst is over. But people like Uncle Ryan don't give up easily. We still need to be careful." How prophetic those words would prove to be. Because even as we walked home that evening, Ryan was making one final, desperate move, one that would bring our conflict to a dangerous climax. The following morning dawned with an eerie calm. Jessica got ready for school while I prepared breakfast, our routine almost normal for the first time in months. The supervised visitation had been temporarily suspended, pending review of new evidence, and Jessica's mood had brightened considerably since our dinner with my parents. "Grandma said I could come over after school to help her with the garden," Jessica mentioned as she gathered her backpack. "Is that okay?" "Of course," I said, smiling at this sign of family healing. "I'll pick you up there after work." Little did I know that as we went about our morning, events were already in motion that would forever change our family. At 9:15 a.m., while I was in a meeting at my new job, a position at a small marketing firm that had hired me, despite the professional damage Ryan had caused, my phone buzzed with breaking news alerts. The headline made my heart stop. "Local investment advisor accused of embezzling from children's cancer charity." The article named Ryan explicitly, detailing allegations that he had stolen over $1.2 million from the Sunshine Foundation. It quoted anonymous sources close to the investigation and mentioned that the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit was now involved due to the interstate nature of the fraud. My phone immediately began ringing with calls from reporters seeking comment as the sister of the accused. I silenced it, focusing on maintaining my composure through the remainder of my meeting. By noon, the story had exploded across local and regional news outlets. Security footage showed FBI agents entering Meridian Investments and leaving with boxes of documents. Ryan's former partner, Keith Blackwood, issued a statement expressing shock and dismay and emphasizing that the alleged crimes were committed without his knowledge. The Sunshine Foundation released its own statement, confirming the investigation and assuring donors that new safeguards were being implemented. They included a heartbreaking paragraph about the children who had been denied assistance due to the missing funds. That afternoon, as the news continued to spread, I received a text from my father. The FBI came to the house. They had questions about the vacation property. Your mother is devastated. I called him immediately, offering to come over, but he declined. We need time, he said, his voice hollow, to process what he's done. What we enabled. After work, I drove to my parents' house to pick up Jessica as planned. She emerged with my mother, both of them carrying small potted herbs they had planted together. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, but she managed a fragile smile. We had a good afternoon, she told me quietly. It helped to have her here. As we drove home, Jessica was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, she asked, Mom, kids at school were talking about Uncle Ryan being arrested? Is that true? Not yet, I answered truthfully. But he's in serious trouble for taking money that was meant to help sick children. She nodded, processing this. Is that why we've been fighting? Because you knew he was stealing? Partly, I said, but mostly because he tried to hurt us when I started discovering the truth. The other kids said our family is messed up, she said, her voice small. I pulled the car over, turning to face her fully. Listen to me, Jess. Families aren't perfect. Sometimes people we love make terrible choices. But what matters is how we respond to those choices, whether we choose truth and kindness, or whether we choose to protect lies and hurt others. We chose truth even when it was hard. That doesn't make our family messed up. It makes us brave. She considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay, I think I understand. By evening, the story had gone national, with Ryan's face appearing on major news networks. The narrative was compelling, a trusted community figure stealing from vulnerable children while maintaining a facade of philanthropy. Interviews with former Sunshine Foundation families provided heart-wrenching context for the betrayal. Meanwhile, our alliance continued to work behind the scenes. Rebecca filed motions to have the custody case dismissed entirely based on evidence of Ryan's fraudulent allegations. Michael coordinated with federal investigators, ensuring they had access to all relevant financial records. Amy Rodriguez monitored Ryan's movements, concerned about his increasingly erratic behavior. Those concerns proved justified when Ryan stopped responding to calls from his attorney the following day. His wife, Lisa, now staying with her sister, reported that he had emptied their joint bank accounts and taken his passport from their safe. The FBI issued a warrant for Ryan's arrest, adding flight risk to the growing list of charges against him. Airports and border crossings were alerted to watch for him. But Ryan had disappeared. For 3 days, there was no sign of him. Lisa filed for emergency divorce and sole custody of their children, citing abandonment and criminal behavior. My parents retreated into seclusion, declining all media requests for comment. Jessica and I tried to maintain normal routines while remaining vigilant, aware that Ryan might blame us entirely for his downfall. Then, on the 4th night, at just after midnight, I was awakened by the sound of breaking glass downstairs. Immediately alert, I grabbed my phone and the baseball bat I'd started keeping beside my bed. I crept to Jessica's room first, finding her still asleep, undisturbed by the noise. As I moved silently toward the stairs, I dialed 911. Whispering my address and the situation to the dispatcher. Possible break-in in progress. Please hurry. Stay on the line, the dispatcher instructed. Officers are 3 minutes out. I could hear movement in the kitchen drawers opening and closing, objects being knocked over. Then footsteps heading toward the stairs. I retreated to Jessica's room, closing and locking her door behind me, positioning myself between the door and my sleeping daughter. Heather! Ryan's voice, slurred and unsteady, called from the hallway. I know you're up there. Come out and face me. The door handle rattled as he tried it, then he began pounding. You ruined everything. Everything I built. You had no right. Jessica woke with a startled cry. Mom? What's happening? It's okay, I whispered, pulling her close. "Help is coming. Just stay quiet." Ryan's pounding became more frantic. "Open this door. I just want to talk. You owe me that much." Through the door, I could smell alcohol and something else, the acrid scent of desperation. "The police are on their way, Ryan," I called. "You need to leave now." He laughed, a broken sound that chilled my blood. "Police? Perfect. Let them come. I've got nothing left to lose anyway." I heard a heavy thud against the door, his shoulder, I guessed, attempting to break it down. Jessica whimpered, burying her face against me. The door frame splintered slightly at the impact. "It's my turn now," Ryan ranted between attempts to break through. "My turn to tell the truth about you, about how you've always been jealous, always wanted what I had." Another crash against the door, the wood creaking ominously. I tightened my grip on the bat, positioning Jessica behind me. "Ryan, stop. This won't solve anything." "Solve?" he shouted. "Nothing solves anything. My life is over because of you. My reputation, my career, my family all gone." The distant wail of police sirens finally reached us. Ryan fell silent, then unleashed a string of profanities. "You think this is over? It's never over. I'll always be watching you, Heather. Always." His footsteps pounded back down the stairs. Seconds later, I heard the front door slam. Through Jessica's window, I caught a glimpse of Ryan staggering across our front lawn, disappearing into the darkness, just as police cruisers turned onto our street with lights flashing. The aftermath was chaotic officers securing the house, taking statements, searching the surrounding blocks for Ryan. Jessica clung to me, trembling but brave. By dawn, there was still no sign of my brother, but the police promised increased patrols in our neighborhood and advised us to stay elsewhere for a few days. We went to my parents' house, where the shock of Ryan's nocturnal attack finally broke through the last of their denial. As we sat in their kitchen, my father reached across the table to take my hand, a gesture of support I hadn't felt since childhood. "We should have listened to you," he said simply. "We failed you both." There were no easy forgivenesses, no instant healing of years of hurt. But it was a beginning, a fragile bridge across the chasm Ryan had created. Later that morning, as Jessica rested upstairs in my old bedroom, my mother joined me on the back porch. We sat in silence for several minutes, watching birds at the feeder she had maintained for decades. "I keep thinking about when you were children," she finally said, trying to pinpoint where we went wrong with Ryan. "Was it something we did? Something we didn't do?" I considered this before answering. "I don't think there's one simple answer, Mom. Some people just have something missing inside them. The capacity to care about others as much as themselves." She nodded slowly, tears trailing down her lined face. "I always knew he could be selfish, but this level of, I never imagined." We were interrupted by my phone, ringing Rebecca calling with news. Ryan had been found and arrested while attempting to board a flight to Mexico using a fake passport. The police had him in custody, and he was facing multiple federal charges for the charity fraud, as well as additional charges for breaking into our home. "It's over," I told my mother after hanging up. "Really over this time." She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "No, dear. Now the healing begins. And that's much harder than fighting ever was." How right she was. The road ahead would be long and difficult, with court proceedings, media attention, and family therapy sessions that would unearth decades of painful dynamics. But for the first time in months, I could see that road stretching toward a future where Jessica and I were safe, where truth had prevailed over manipulation, and where justice, imperfect but real, had finally been served. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Jessica and I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing deeply of the cool air and the even cooler sense of finality. Inside, Ryan had just been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to wire fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, identity theft, and breaking and entering. The judge had been particularly harsh given the nature of his victims, children fighting cancer, and his attempts to flee justice. "How do you feel?" I asked Jessica, who at 13 now seemed so much older, so much wiser than her age. She considered the question carefully, a habit she developed during our family therapy sessions. "Sad," she finally said, "but also relieved. Is that wrong?" Not at all, I assured her. It's perfectly normal to have mixed feelings, especially about family. We walked to the car in comfortable silence. So much had changed in the past half year. The initial media frenzy had eventually died down, replaced by occasional updates as Ryan's case progressed through the system. My parents had sold their house too full of painful memories and moved into a smaller place closer to us. They were attending therapy both individually and with Jessica and me, slowly rebuilding relationships damaged by years of Ryan's manipulation. Lisa had finalized her divorce and moved with her children to another state, seeking a fresh start away from the shadow of Ryan's crimes. Before leaving, she had apologized to me for the times she'd enabled Ryan's behavior or looked the other way. I should have seen the signs, she'd said. I think part of me did, but I chose not to acknowledge them. The Sunshine Foundation had recovered some of the stolen funds through asset seizure, though much had already been spent. In a surprising twist of healing, Jessica and I had become volunteers for the organization, helping with fundraising events and continuing her photo project documenting the families they served. My own career had stabilized with a promotion at the marketing firm, which had appreciated my grace under pressure during the media attention. More importantly, I had established firm boundaries around work hours, ensuring I had plenty of time with Jessica during this critical healing period. As we drove home from the courthouse, Jessica asked, "Will we ever visit Uncle Ryan in prison?" I had been expecting this question eventually. "That's entirely up to you," I told her. "Not right away, I think. But someday, if you want to, we can discuss it." She nodded, looking out the window at the passing scenery. "I've been thinking about forgiveness," she said. "Dr. Carver says forgiveness isn't about excusing what someone did. It's about not letting it control you anymore." Dr. Carver had replaced Dr. Jimenez as Jessica's therapist when we needed someone specializing in family trauma. His gentle, straightforward approach had been exactly what Jessica needed. "That's very wise," I said. "Are you working on forgiveness?" "I'm trying," she admitted. "Not for Uncle Ryan's sake, but for mine. I don't want to stay angry forever." Her insight brought tears to my eyes. My daughter, who had been caught in the crossfire of adult betrayal and manipulation, was finding her way toward healing with more maturity than many adults I knew. That weekend, we had dinner at my parents' new apartment, a tradition we'd established in recent months. My mother had prepared Jessica's favorite lasagna, and my father had hung some of Jessica's photographs in their living room, a silent acknowledgement of her talent that meant more than words ever could. After dinner, Jessica disappeared into the spare bedroom where she'd been working on a secret project. She emerged carrying a small wooden box, similar to the one she had made for Ryan, but more refined, showing her growing skill. "I made this for you both," she said shyly, presenting it to my parents. "For your new home." My mother's hands trembled as she accepted the gift, opening it carefully. Inside was a collection of family photos, old ones of happier times, and new ones we'd taken since beginning our healing journey. Beneath them was a handwritten note. "Family is complicated, but love doesn't have to be. Thank you for trying. Love, Jessica." My father, who rarely showed emotion, wiped tears from his eyes before embracing Jessica. "We don't deserve you," he whispered, "but we're so grateful for you." Later that night, as I tucked Jessica into bed, something she usually claimed to be too old for, but still occasionally allowed, she asked, "Mom, do you think we'll ever be a normal family?" I sat on the edge of her bed, considering how to answer. "I think normal is just a setting on the washing machine," I said finally, earning a small smile. "Every family has its struggles, its secrets, its wounds. What matters is whether we face them honestly and keep trying to do better." Like we're doing? Exactly like we're doing. As autumn turned to winter, our healing continued, not in a straight line, but in a series of steps forward and occasional steps back. There were difficult days the first Christmas without Ryan, but with the weight of his betrayal still heavy in the air. The day his face appeared on a television news retrospective of the year's notable criminal cases. The morning Jessica came home crying because a classmate had made a cruel remark about her criminal uncle. But there were beautiful moments too. My mother teaching Jessica her secret cookie recipe, something she'd previously only shared with me. My father attending Jessica's school photography exhibition, proudly telling everyone who would listen about his talented granddaughter. The day I received a promotion at work and came home to find my parents, and Jessica had prepared a surprise celebration dinner. Life would never return to what it had been before, but perhaps that was for the best. The family we were building now was founded on truth rather than illusion, on genuine support rather than manipulation, on love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger. One evening in early spring, as Jessica and I walked home from the community center where we'd attended a support group for families affected by financial fraud, she paused to photograph a cherry tree just beginning to bloom. "You know what I've learned from everything that happened?" she said, reviewing the image on her camera. "That sometimes people aren't who we think they are. But that doesn't mean we should stop trusting completely. It just means we should pay attention to what people do, not just what they say." "That's a valuable lesson," I agreed. "What else?" "That standing up for the truth is hard, but living with lies is harder in the long run." I put my arm around her shoulders, marveling at her wisdom. "Anything else?" She looked up at me, her eyes clear and determined. "That I want to be like you when I grow up. Someone who doesn't give up when things get hard. Someone who protects the people they love." Those words healed something deep inside me that I hadn't even realized was still broken, the part of me that had doubted my decisions, that had wondered if fighting back had been the right choice, that had questioned whether I was setting the right example for my daughter. In the end, that's what our journey taught us, that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family that nurtures you, that blood ties can be weapons as easily as they can be bonds, that standing up to toxic people isn't selfish, it's necessary survival, and most importantly, that healing doesn't mean forgetting or excusing, but rather building something new and stronger from the broken pieces. As for Ryan, his actions eventually caught up with him, as they so often do with those who value power and control above all else. The empire of lies he had constructed crumbled because one person, one seemingly less powerful person, refused to accept his version of reality. It wasn't revenge that brought him down in the end, but simple truth. Have you ever had to stand up to a toxic family member or friend? How did you handle it? Drop your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in our story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences that might help you navigate your own challenging relationships. Remember, sharing is caring. Someone in your circle might need to hear exactly this story right now. Thank you for being here. And remember, your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it.